Might just be Clemson football in 2021. How about this? In 4 games, the Tigers have now dropped 2, including North Carolina State for the first time in 9 years. So the ACC Coastal, it is truly up for grabs, and it's not even October, and Clemson does not have control of the division. We got Jason Priester on the line from allclemson.com on SI to, of course, help us break it down. And these breakdowns used to be a little bit more by the book with Clemson. But now, even after that Georgia game, people just thought Clemson would step into the ACC and take it from there and get back into playoff contention. But, man, what a game on Saturday in Raleigh. And like we talked about, we didn't know whether Clemson would be able to flip on the switch, or we both said, hey, if they can't get their act together, they're going to come home with an L. That's what happened.
Yeah, this Clemson team is the offense in particular. It's really struggling right now. There's just no identity. They're getting nothing from the guys on the offensive line. They're mixing and matching, trying to come up with something that works. And so far, nothing has. The receivers aren't getting any separation. They don't really have a true slot guy. The play calling, has been questionable at best. Clemson's been able to get by in these ACC games on sheer talent alone for so long. Honestly, I think it's kind of lulled this staff into a false sense of security. And instead of kind of tweaking the offense from year to year, they just kind of keep using what works. Well, now it's not working anymore, and there's no quick fix to this thing, man. I think Clemson's in for a bumpy season, and I definitely don't think they have taken their last loss of the season.
Got Jason Priester on the line from allclemson.com on SI. So, folks, lock it in right here, the voice of college football. Please like the video, share the videos out on social media, and subscribe. But head on over as well to Jason's work on allclemson.com. I want you to be able to put this into perspective. First of all, you got to tell everybody the stat that you laid on me. This one's still sinking in. I think this is it's not a great stat for the Clemson offense, but it just means a whole lot. 10 drives, 27 yards, not 10 plays. That would be bad enough. 10 drives, 27 yards.
Yeah, outside of those 2 scoring drives they had in the first 4 quarters, I'm pretty sure it was Clemson had 10 drives for 27 total yards and almost as many 3-and-outs as they had first downs in that game. It was just, especially in that first half, it was just one 3-and-out after the other. And the more often they went 3-and-out, the longer the defense stayed out on the field, and they just weren't able to get off the field on third downs. I think they had like 5 or 6 offsides penalties on defense, and it was just like the snowball effect, and it all caught up with them. And that defense played admirably. They held North Carolina State to 14 points in regulation, and that's about all you can ask for. They gave their offense a chance to win. Clemson's just not in a spot right now where they can do much on offense. There's just no other way to say it. The quarterback's struggling. The offensive line struggling, receivers are struggling, running backs are struggling because of the offensive line. Now your starting running back's hurt. He's out for at least 2 or 3 weeks with an injured knee, which could have been much worse. I think we were all expecting that to be a torn ACL there with Will Shipley. But there's just a lot of questions surrounding this Clemson offense right now. And as much as most people want there to be an easy fix, I don't think there is one. I don't think there's a button you can push and make everything all right before next week. I think this is going to be a process, and it might be a long one that lasts throughout the rest of this season and throughout the off season.
Well, Jason, let's see if we can take this point by point through the offense. One has to do with play calling. Now, Tony Elliott, I want to get this straight. Tony Elliott made the comment either after the game or sometime between the end of the game and now. I saw this on Twitter, and I want to make sure I got this straight. When asked about play calling, he said, we run the same base plays as everybody else across the country. For some reason, he threw in North Carolina, but he said that we run the same basic plays as everybody else. And of course, the comment coming back on social media is, why are you making $2 million if you're running the same plays as everybody else? But I want to make sure, to be fair, that we're running that comment correctly.
He said that today, this morning, about 2 hours ago. But yeah, he did say that, and I think he was trying to make the point that, you know, it was more that their issues revolve more around execution than play calling. But you know, there's no denying that the offense has become stale in the last few years. There's no pre-snap motion. There's no eye candy. You know, we don't see the jet sweep involved in the offense anymore. You know, it looked to me like the other day the reverse or some kind of misdirection stuff was there. They never even attempted it. You know, I mean, it's gotten real stale. Like I touched on earlier, they've been able to get by on sheer talent for so long. I think they haven't been forced to adapt, and now they're being slapped in the face with some reality. Now they're going to be forced to adapt. They'll either do it or they won't. And if they're stubborn and stay set in their ways, then this might be the end of this Clemson run. But Dabo Swinney has shown in the past, you know, he's capable of making some tough decisions. You know, when he fired Kevin Steele and brought on Brent Venables, when he hired Chad Morris, I fully expect this program to do everything in its power to adapt and evolve and try to correct some of the issues that we're seeing right now. Because I don't think, you know, it's by no means is the program a dumpster fire or anything. I don't think it's anything that can really be fixed this season, but I don't think it's anything that can't be fixed before the start of next season.
Talking Clemson, coming off a 27-21 loss in overtime at North Carolina State. They've got 4-0 Boston College coming up. Any particular thoughts about DJ's play and how that's compared to previous weeks? Coming off just 111 yards passing in this one.
You know, that DJ's play was odd in this game, I thought. You know, he had a couple of drives where he looked like the DJ we saw last year. You know, the 2 touchdown drives. I mean, he rolled out to his right one time and just threw a laser to Justin Ross in the back of the end zone. I mean, he threw a couple of darts to Joseph Nagata on that touchdown drive, and one of them was dropped, but he hit him right in the hands with it. And he looked good on the scoring drive late too. But then the rest of the drives, you know, he's still holding on to the ball too long. He doesn't look comfortable in the pocket. His pocket presence not very good. He's locking on to his primary target too often, and it's just resulting in a lot of inconsistency. That's what I see from DJ right now. A lot of inconsistency. His mechanics aren't really good. His footwork looks off. I mean, he just looks like a raw quarterback prospect right now. He does not look like a fine-tuned 5-star guy.
He threw 26 passes. He probably went back to pass and had to run a number of times. So they probably called 30 to 32 passing plays, which they would have called a lot more, but they couldn't stay on the field, obviously, going almost 3 and out constantly. But Justin Ross is basically who he's locked in on. Now, that's either because Ross is obviously one of the best wide receivers in college football and probably open, but also I wonder if there's an issue with him just being locked in on Justin Ross.
You know, that's a good question, because all offseason, you know, we heard Dabo Swinney on multiple occasions boast about how great these wide receivers were, probably the best he's ever had. And we've not seen that translate onto the field quite yet. You know, we saw Justin Ross make some plays the other day, but even he himself had a drop that probably would have tied up the game in overtime, in that double overtime there. I mean, he just dropped one. But, yeah, I totally agree with that. He is really locking on to Ross a lot of the times. I think only 2 other receivers caught passes in that game. And when you got a receiver room as deep as Clemson's, guys like E.J. Williams, Joseph Ngata, Frank Ladson, Takari Collins, Bo Collins, you got to try and get those guys involved somehow, even though, you know, Bo Collins had a big drop in that game too. But you got to try and get more than Justin Ross involved. And Saturday, it was him or nobody for the most part.
Clemson taking on Boston College. as they did 1 year ago when DJ had his coming out party trailing 28-6 to bring them back to beat Boston College. This time BC is 4-0. Talking Clemson football, of course, with Jason Priester, as we do on a regular basis here at the Voice of College Football. All right, Will Shipley, maybe Lynn J. Dixon should have stuck around for another week or so. So Will Shipley, unfortunately, as you had alluded to, is going to be out at least a few weeks, and he has become the main ball carrier. 21 carries against Georgia Tech. He had 11 against NC State before he got hurt. So again, what appears to be the prognosis on him?
They didn't really go into specifics. They just said he could be back as early as in a couple of weeks. I was hearing he had a torn ACL. I think that was the general consensus. I think they were surprised and relieved to learn that he did not have one, which is really good news because, Brian Bresee tore his ACL in that game. James Skowski left with another stinger. That's his second in 2 weeks. I don't think there's no guarantee he'll be back this week, which it wouldn't surprise me if he was. I'm just saying there's no guarantee. Another starting linebacker, Balin Spector, he left that game injured. He's been dealing with a bum knee. So the injuries are starting to mount up. And as far as Will Shipley's, they've got another freshman running back, Phil Maffa, who they really wanted to redshirt this season. But they're just not going to be able to do that now. Dabo Swinney said they're going to have to use him now. They're not going to be able to hold him any longer. He's going to have to get involved with the offense. I think we'll see Mikey Dukes get involved. They've been trying to get him more involved, but he's just not been as consistent as they want to see in practice. He's had a few carries this year, and he's already had one fumble already in the few carries he's gotten. And with the Shipley injury, the Lynn J. Dixon exit might very well prove to be far more costly than anybody envisioned. But at the same time, I don't think there was anything to be done there. I think the two parties were at an impasse, and it was time to cut ties, and so there's no going back there. So it's like Dabo Swinney says, he's got who he's got, and he's going to have to make do with what they got.
Sometimes those impasses can be taken care of if you can promise 20 or 22 carries a game, though. So maybe that would have been the case, but we'll never know. This Boston College team is no joke. We know that they always bring a stout defense. They always have, or at least in recent years, have had a really good offensive line, one of the better units in the ACC with a lot of NFL players along the offensive front. Unfortunately for them, Phil Jurkovec, who is just a potential great quarterback, got injured in the first game of the season because, man, saw him play several times last year, and he is a real talent as a transfer from Notre Dame. So they've had to rely on Dennis Grosel, who's a backup quarterback. They've tried to protect him. He did have to throw it 29 times because they got into a bit of a shootout with Missouri, as that was an exciting game, and BC won it at home in overtime, 41-34. So we know you haven't done your homework on Boston College yet, but they got running back in Pat Garwo, who ran for 175 yards against a pretty good Missouri defense. So this Boston College bunch, this isn't going to be, despite what Vegas thinks, an easy go at it this Saturday either.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how Clemson could be favored by 2 touchdowns in this game. That's a little mind-blowing. But, yeah, when I think of Boston College, first thing that comes to mind is tough offensive line. They're always going to have the big nasties up front. They're always good along the offensive line. And more often than not, they're going to be tough and physical on the defensive line too. But this Clemson defense is now down both of its starting defensive tackles. And I don't care how much depth you got, that's going to affect your run defense. As good as Clemson's run defense has been, it's going to take a little bit of a hit. And when I think of this Boston College team right now, I think of Zay Flowers, the receiver. The guy from NC State. Clemson, they found a soft spot in that defense, and they just kept throwing it over and over and over and over. And he ended up Emeka, how do you say his name? Emeka Azizi. I think he had 11 catches, way over 100 yards, a couple of touchdowns maybe. Yeah. I know he had the one spectacular touchdown catch in the first half, but And, he was beating Andrew Booth a lot on a lot of those throws. So Zay Flowers is a guy that scares me when I think about this game. He's really good. I don't care which one of the quarterbacks is playing. That's the guy Clemson has to be wary of. But to me, still got to go back to this Clemson offense. Can they score enough points? Can they generate enough offense and put enough points on the board to even give themselves a chance at winning this game? To me, it starts and stops right there.
Yeah, we had warned people about it. Azizi caught 14 passes for 116 yards. Devin Carter also had a nice game with some big catches for NC State. He had 8 catches. Zay Flowers, yes, against Mizzou, 8 catches, 62 yards, and a touchdown. Boston College actually has better playmakers on that team than they've had in a long, long time. Jalen Gill's a good player. C.J. Lewis is a good player. Travis Levy's a good player. Their defense, though, against Mizzou, so this will be an interesting comparison because of all the issues Clemson's had along the offensive line. No sacks, 1 TFL. 1 tackle for loss in that entire game, overtime game against Mizzou. So they didn't make plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage against Mizzou. So we'll see if they get healthy against that Clemson offensive line.
Well, it won't hurt if DJ's back there holding on to the ball too long. But, yeah. Again, I go back to this Clemson offense and whether or not they can get anything going, create some kind of identity. Now that they've got 2 losses, the pressure's kind of off. And I know fans have complained about the ultra-conservative play call through the first 4 games. And it has been ultra-conservative. But I kind of look at it from a different perspective, or at least I can make this argument. Those have all been 1-score games if you take out the South Carolina State game. To me, that one doesn't count. The rest of them have all been 1-score games. You're 1 play away from winning, 1 play away from losing, and your defense is playing lights out. You got a quarterback who is low on confidence at the moment, receivers that aren't playing well, and an offensive line that's frankly just not living up to its billing. I think I would probably be ultra conservative too and put those games in the hands of my defense and take what on offense, take what the defense is giving me. But now that they've lost 2 games, playoffs off the table, they're not in control of their own destiny, even in the ACC anymore. I'm curious to see this weekend if they won't kind of open things up a little bit. Maybe make it a little bit more fun for some of the players, throw in a reverse, throw in a jet sweep, a flea flicker, a halfback pass, something, anything to create a spark. I mean, you got to do something. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over again. It's just not working. Hadn't worked for 4 games, and it's not going to work against this Boston College team either.
It's the most talented team in the division. There's no question about that. But if they continue to play like this, it's going to be a fascinating free-for-all. Louisville, NC State, Boston College, Wake. I'm going to throw out Florida State. They're awful. Syracuse, I think they're awful, but they actually beat Liberty this Friday night. They're 3-1 non-conference, so maybe they can pull an upset or 2. But basically, those other 5 teams, there could be wins back and forth all over the place.
Yeah, one thing about this Clemson team being so down this year, it will make the ACC, a little more entertaining, a little more fun to watch. I think we were talking about it before we came on. I would love to see North Carolina State or Wake Forest, not North Carolina State, Boston College or Wake Forest run the table, and go undefeated and see what that playoff committee does with them, because it'll be very hard to keep an undefeated ACC team out the playoff. I don't care if their name is Wake Forest.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter. It should not matter. Jason Priester, allclemson.com on SI. Join him. Follow the trials and travails of this Clemson football team through 2021.
I appreciate it, Mark.